Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. I am your host, Hondo Carpenter. Additionally, I am your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on Sports Illustrated, joined by, as I am each and every Saturday, by the great Jonathan Shop, tremendously successful member of the media, as well as a additionally tremendously successful attorney down in the Buckhead, Atlanta area of Georgia. He joins us each and every week to talk Raiders, to go around the NFL. And let me see, John. I wonder if we're going to be able to find some Raider news to talk about. You just added two big time gentlemen, and I use that term with all respect and truthfulness. Let's start with the obvious. They add Tom Brady to the ownership group, the GOAT. Now, we've seen Irvin and Michael, some of the greatest ever in basketball. It didn't translate to ownership or coaching or leadership. But then you turn around and see other guys that do tremendously well. Let's talk about Brady. How big of a deal is it to add him to the silver and black?
It should be huge. Yeah, you talk about there's been a wide spread between Wayne Gretzky's success, Larry Bird, who was a really good NBA coach, Magic, some up and down. Magic is a way better owner, is part of an ownership group of teams like the currently the Commanders and the Dodgers. Michael Jordan, business wise, did well with Charlotte, didn't do real well on the court. This is very interesting for many reasons, including let's do a little history for everybody. Richard Seymour and Tom Brady are the third and fourth former NFL players to become owners after, of course, George Halas and Jerry Richardson. That is interesting. What's also interesting for people that have followed this show and followed your work, you talked about the issue was how much of a discount was Tom Brady getting. Thus, he gets 5% rather than 10. It was a big day for Raiders, of course. Also, earlier this week, a big day in Atlanta where those owners' meetings were that Jerry Jones brought everybody's attention to. This is a big page turner for Tom Brady and a big page turner for the Raiders. I think his days on TV should be and will be very much numbered. I don't think it's really appropriate for somebody with that much of an ownership stake to be doing TV also to a full extent. And I doubt that's going to last very long. But this is probably a massive sea change, massive shift. You can put a giant line in the sand. Raiders before Brady and Seymour, Raiders after Brady and Seymour. Does that mean a lot of change is coming very soon? Yes and no. One thing that stands out by a mile, everybody knows across this sport, is the Raiders have fantastic facilities, absolutely best in class.
Best in the business.
The Chiefs told you as much after the last Super Bowl. So they got a lot going for them. I don't think a lot of that is going to change, but some of the mentality and approach from numbers 1 through 53 and beyond, I think are going to get evaluated and a talking to. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. I hope it begins very quickly. I know Raiders Nation, they need something right now to hold on to grasp onto as they see a season that looks like it's been derailed by individual interests. This will hopefully circle the wagons a little bit. There's still plenty of games to play. There's a new couple of faces, a couple of names in the building that have serious clout when you're talking about winning professional football games. Tom Brady said it all at the bottom of his letter. That's all you got to go by. Those last lines, those hashtags, that's what's happening.
So Shannon and I on Tuesday night were talking to an NFL general manager as we were driving down the road about it. And he goes, I don't think Raider Nation realizes there is now a BB and an AB. And I go, what? And he goes, before Brady, after Brady. He goes, this is what he said. He goes, I can tell you, because I know Tom, he would not have wanted to have been an owner if he was expected to be silent. That's not the way he operates. And he goes, every single thing in his life is all about winning. And he said to us, said this to Shannon and I, he said, I have no doubt if he stays in broadcasting, he will be the greatest. because he will work harder. He goes, Tony Romo just came easy. He goes, John Madden, he had to work at polishing, but it was easy for him. He goes, Tom Brady is going to work his tail off because he'll want to be known as the greatest TV guy. He goes, this guy is going to be more active, and this was his opinion, than what anyone thinks. I agree with that opinion. I know a lot of people that know him very well, that's how he is. And I'm telling you, when you look at what the Raiders have been up to, and not just since Mark Davis, look at the end of the Al Davis era, that can't be bad news for the Raiders.
No, they need to find a way to be stable. They need to find a way to make decisions in the best interest of the organization and stack those on each other. So it's not necessarily going to be a quick fix or a Band-Aid, or here comes quarterback receiver combination, or here comes a combination of a guy or two. The amount of experience that Seymour and Brady have in the NFL, obviously extremely recently, is ridiculous. It's insane how long Tom Brady played. And he only played that long because he wanted to. And it sounds like he probably could have played another year or two if he wanted to, or maybe he almost was going to, but he blamed the retirement party. Who knows? I want to see how active he gets too. We talked about this from really the time it became clear that this is almost an application, if you will, that he was going to be coming this way. It was just a matter of to what extent. I am sure he will be cautioned and probably reined in from becoming an active general manager. That's probably a little too risky to do right out of the bat, but it wouldn't surprise me years down the road if we saw more of a collaborative idea in mind and making some decisions on players, on different things. I would think you probably see that sooner than later, only because Seymour and Brady, they probably think they know more about the game now in 2024 than they will in 2028 or 2029, when different things continue to evolve and change a little bit. So a lot of eyes are going to be on it. It's a great news for the Raiders to bury the end of Davante Adams being out of town. So hopefully it helps them turn the page. This is a big move long term. It's 2024. I want to be back here talking about how things have changed in, say, 2028. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, because I've given you a lot of the behind the scenes with Davante. This is not a shock, and I encourage everyone. Our deep dive article is going to come during the bye week. Those things are long. There's a lot of writing that goes into it, but man, we talked to so many multiple players, non-players. I'm going to even share a conversation I had with Davante this year. I encourage everybody to make sure you look forward to the bye week and that story. John, I'm going to skip one of the topics that we were going to talk about with October scouting. I'm going to skip part of it. I don't want you to follow what we talked about or what our notes were, because there's something there I need to give you some behind the scenes on. So I'm just letting you know up front why I'm going to skip that one. But I want to get to Belichick's validation and his talk about the Jets. They go fire Robert Saleh, which makes no sense to me. If you're going to fire the guy 6 games into the year, you shouldn't have kept him. If the ice is that thin, let him go. Get your guy last year, whatever. Then they go get Davante. All right, whatever. Talk about the Belichick thoughts on the Jets. As usual, I thought Bill was a genius.
This is what people love. This is why it's great to, first of all, it's great to tune into the Manning cast for the first half, because you get a football lesson from Bill Belichick, because he's telling you what he sees. And in this case, he was ready to rip the can open and just tore up the Jets. As I've said on this show, and a lot of you folks out there have thought, it's the owner. The Jets, it's the owner. And Bill Belichick said, it's the owner. There's a reason they've won barely 30% of their games in the last 10 years. The owner being the owner, just ready, fire, aim. That quote, ready, fire, aim, is going to stick a little bit in the football business. And it's awesome. It's hilarious. It's going to stick on Woody Johnson, and it probably should. This doesn't make any sense. Saleh is playing for the lead in the division. And record aside, that's where they were. And We'll never know exactly what happened. If there was a meeting with the owner and he says, "Hey, I'm going to change the offensive play caller," and no, you're not. Off you go. I don't know. It's hilarious though. You've got to be old enough to know that Belichick was actually the head coach of the Jets twice for a few minutes. The last time, most famously, and it brought up on the Manning cast, he wrote on like a cocktail napkin, "I resign as coach of the Jets." Hilarious move. So there's obviously a long-term issue between Bill Belichick and the owner of the Jets. To his credit, Belichick says, "Look, I am biased. I don't think very much of the Jets, but here's my analysis of what went on here." Ridiculous. It doesn't make a lot of sense at this point in the season, given where they were.
Apologize for the car honking in the background.
Oh, okay. I didn't even hear it. So it doesn't make any sense given where the Jets were. The timing of it makes very little sense as well. And the opportunity to improve things for the Jets, it doesn't seem to be there. It looks like the downside for the Jets just dropped really far to the floor. I don't know how much higher the upside got. They're essentially a rudderless ship at this time. Who's coaching that team? Who's leading that team? Is it, a relatively aloof 40-something-year-old quarterback? That's what it looks like from the outside. We don't know. Also, what was said a couple weeks ago.
Let me just make it clear, okay? Aaron Rodgers runs that show.
What I also thought was awesome was that Belichick pointed out some of the things he saw at Hard Knocks. I'm telling you, and a lot of you folks out there know you're watching every single minute of Hard Knocks. You learn so much from it. Belichick's like, "Look, I saw Hard Knocks. There's some things there that suggested that was not a organization or a franchise with a whole lot of stability." Ding, I agree, including the offensive coordinator that's running around like with Austin Powers codes for the red zone and this and that. And they're like, ooh. The Jets are a mess. Do they get better long-term this season? I don't know. Davante Adams may help them a bit. He may help them a lot. The Jets are looking like they are trying to flash fry their season. They got these ingredients, some of them really good. They're turning the heat all the way up and throwing everything in there and then putting a new chef on the burner. I don't think it's going to work very well, but Bill Belichick absolutely shreds the Jets on the Manning cast. How many other times is he ever going to shred any franchise or owner on that show? Zero. The closest he came to it was saying, Arthur Blank was down on the sideline during the Super Bowl when the Falcons were way up, which is no problem. But he said, it looked like he was celebrating a bit, and he's always a really well-dressed guy. That's like a 0% burn compared to ready, fire, aim. Jets.
I got to tell you, though, and because you've done this with me now for almost 2 decades. I love Belichick. I love everything about Belichick. And when he said it, it was literally, I get a text, drop the mic.
Yeah, you know what he was doing too, and again, I really like having him on there because there's some football knowledge that comes in and there's some funny resets of games that he's had against both of the Manning brothers. And he even goes way back to the Giants days. And obviously he's got a great, if you're a super nerd, he's got a great new show with Mike Lombardi and Matt Patricia as well. So he's doing a lot of talking. That was targeted and it hit. And man, it's going to leave a mark. I think that ready, fire, aim thing is going to stick around this business.
I am stunned at how good Patricia is on that show.
Yeah,
I have said this so many times, and I know there's a lot of former New England people who've told me they agree with me. I've told this to Josh McDaniels. The reason so many of Bill's proteges fail is when they leave New England, they try to be Bill rather than take the knowledge. It's why Vrabel was very successful. He didn't try to be Bill. He learned a lot from Bill. He utilized that with Bill, but he didn't change who he was. There is a deep, if Matt Patricia, I told Patricia one time, if you just be you, what is this stuff? Because it was some stuff in Detroit. I'm like, that's not you. Stop. But I think they feel like, okay, for it to work, I got to act like Bill. No, you could take everybody. It's like with me. I try to be teachable. I try to be faithful, available, teachable. I try to take the things that others do well and think, man, I want to incorporate that, but I can't change who I am. I can't. You've known me a long time. I've covered, when I cover Michigan State, I care about Michigan State. Okay. But I cover teams now I'm not a fan of, but I've always cared about people. I've always cared about good people. I always want good people to succeed. I just think whether it's football or anything else, when people fail, it's usually because they're not being true. When you look at Matt Patricia on that show, so good. He's phenomenal. And if he had taken that into coaching, I think he'd still be coaching because he was a good coach. But he looked terrible. It's just like Josh McDaniels. Okay, Josh, in his 2 stints as a head coach, was horrible. He wasn't bad. He was horrible. But I've said to Josh, and I stand by it. I mean, this still bothers Raider fans when I say it. The players didn't hate Josh. Didn't hate him at all. And they just didn't understand how can this guy be this guy. And he wasn't fake. He wasn't duplicitous, but he was so trying to be what he thought he had to be. No, you got to be who you are.
That's very interesting because it looked like Matt Patricia just put up this wall, this Belichick wall when he got to Detroit. And it's like he's 175 degrees from that. When you see him on this show, it's like, I didn't when it started, I didn't recognize him at first because he's significantly smaller and I didn't hear him talk that much. And I'm like, wait a second, that is Matt Patricia. And the interesting thing about that show is Belichick, Lombardi is Lombardi. And now Patricia is Patricia. It's just that Patricia is very different from the one that we saw as a coach. If he gets back out in any capacity again as a head coach, you certainly hope that he has taken that lesson and applied it. Josh McDaniels, we remember, I think it was a 5-0 start in Denver. Ooh, here comes big success. It's not been success since then. And I wonder if you may have actually just hit on exactly what the difference is between those that have had success leaving Bill and those that have not. This is going to be interesting to see. We'll talk about it later this winter because to me, Mike Vrabel is the most interesting candidate in this offseason, right there with Bill Belichick. It's funny how that works.
Yeah, when you look like Nick Saban, okay, people say, oh, look it. And I'm not going to say which one, but one of Bill's disciples, when he and I were having this conversation, in fact, it was he, myself, Shannon, and one other person. There were 4 of us having this conversation. And we were talking about him, why don't you be who you are? And he mentioned Saban. And I go, okay, I know Saban a lot better than you. It's not an act with Saban. He's not acting like Belichick. Those 2 are peas in a pod. And I said, so if now when you see, I'll give you a good one. Everybody's seeing Nick Saban now in a very fun light. Okay. And that's the Nick that I love and respect. I've told so many people he is one of the kindest, nicest people. But you can still see that razor sharp acerbic edge in him, even on game day. The other day, I don't remember, a few weeks ago, his wife, Miss Terry picks Colorado and says, I'm sticking with my guy, Deion. And as much as Nick wanted to stick with Deion because it is a friend, nope. He went the other way just because it's football and he can't let friendship get into it. I mean, and the funny part is Terry ended up being right and Deion gets the upset. But that's Nick. He does have a warmer side, but he is a prickly pear, and I don't mean that in a phallic form. I just mean he is that guy. And so they look at those 2 and say, well, this is, you don't have to be that way. All right. Before we get into our featured foursome, we got to dig in on the last thing I want to talk about today. Jerry Jones Gone Wild Part 2.
Here we go. Remember earlier this year?
Oh, my.
Remember the printed comments with with I think it's not Calvin Hill, but the print journalist down there in Dallas. And then he gets on the radio show here. Now, if folks haven't heard this, I encourage you actually to hear it, because I don't think it was as bad on the air before he went to Atlanta as it looked in print. But basically what Jones was saying was, I pretty much had it. We don't have the time in the NFL to go backward. So don't ask me about why we didn't do this and why we didn't do that in the off season. We put our eggs in the basket that we have, and we have to go forward. Now, one of the interesting things that's coming up about the Cowboys this year that I didn't realize probably that really frames this whole thing is Jerry came out and had a lot of success with the triplets, as we know. Michael, Emmett, and Troy, 3 key cogs. What I didn't realize was he's probably been trying to recreate that with 3 key cogs on his franchise ever since. It never really hit me, because you'd think, well, that was like a one-time deal. That's not going to happen again. But if you look at where the Cowboys have spent their money, this is what you see. Now, what I see in the Cowboys mirrors the Raiders a little bit this year, and maybe the Cincinnati Bengals, in that I believe in the offseason. Now, dial yourself back to what Bill Polian said on this network. I believe in the offseason, you had players for the Cowboys put their own interests at the peak, their own interests really ahead of the Cowboys, or right there with their team. And what did that do to their locker room? We don't know. But you had guys chasing contracts. You had guys thinking about themselves. They want theirs. Well, that's fine unless it comes at a detriment to your team. That's what it looks like to me. It looks like the Cowboys are much further from competitive than they are closer. And it looks to me like some of the stuff that happened there in the offseason hasn't worked very well. And Jones has had it. This is part 2 of Jerry Jones Gone Wild. I believe there will be a part 3 later this year. Who knows? Maybe even later this week. And it's going to be pretty entertaining. If you're not a Cowboy fan, it's entertaining as can be. You got to hear it, though. It's about 20 minutes long. It's not as bad necessarily to me as it looks like in print, but it's entertaining as can be.
I agree with you. And I'm going to add this. You saw what happens when you put people in your locker room who it's me before we, and that's my opinion of Davante. And coming up in the bye week, when people read my Ezekiel Trezevance and I latest deep dive, they're going to know exactly what we're talking about. All right, fearsome foursome. Where do we stand on the year, John?
Tied, level tied. We had the bye week last week, which was hot. A lot of people said, hey, wait a minute, I don't know what 4 games to watch. That's okay. I'm sure you watched them all. This week, we're changing gears. We have real games with real stakes. This is a page-turning part of the season. These games start to actually matter a little more than some of the early ones. And one of the first ones is, I think, the oldest rivalry in the NFL. It is an NFC East. I know people are probably sick of it because played more of them than any, I think. Philadelphia at New York Giants. The Giants showed some signs of life. Dable showed some signs of Dable, which I liked. I don't like Daniel Jones. He cannot play winning quarterback in the NFL. Philadelphia, turning the page. Give me the Eagles.
I want the G-men to be good. I think when the G-men are good, it's good for the NFL. I have so many friends in that organization who play, coach, and work in management for the G-men. I am going to go past my brain here, and this is where I get in trouble when it comes to football. Football is not supposed to be talked about with your heart. It's supposed to be analyzed with your brain. I'm ignoring my brain, something my wife's accused me of on more than one occasion in my life. I'm going to go with the G-men.
They are at home. They will be jacked up, and they look like there's some fight left in them. I don't know what Neighbor's status is now. Obviously, that would be a huge help, but that should be a good one. It should also be a good one in the Midwest. Lions at Vikings. 2 things to think about that I didn't realize with that stadium. It actually gets warm if the sun is shining. Apparently, even it can get really warm. Hot. Yeah, that's one thing that I heard from Matt Patricia this week that I didn't realize. The other thing, of course, is that it is absolutely loud and noisy. Regardless of the incredibly bad break loss of Aiden Hutchinson, which again, I'm going to go ahead and blame on the roster size being too small because I don't know if he's in the game, if they're 3 deep at that position at that time. The Lions are going to beat the Vikings in Minnesota. The Vikings are more fool's gold than hard gold. Give me the Lions.
I'm going to tell you something. I'm with you. I believe in this Lions team. I think they're good. I think the loss of Aiden is huge, but this is not a one-horse pony. I think Dan Campbell is rising up. I think he's one of the top 10 coaches in the NFL right now. I'm going with the Lions. I agree with you.
If you want to be a really good NFL coach, I would want to follow the path that Dan Campbell took. He got really great training from who, Sean Payton, and
great.
Man,
Bill Parcells.
Absolutely, Bill Parcells. I mean, this is a blueprint for how to go where you want to go if you want to be a coach. He took a joke. The place was a joke. A lot of people working on it. It's no joke. And this is going to show how strong that actual franchise is right now, what they do in Minnesota. Texans, Packers, check your cleats. The Packers field away from the middle of the field is known to be slippery. I heard Belichick and Patricia talking about getting the 7-studded cleat. It's no joke there. The Texans are for real. The Packers appear for real. Jaden Reed looks like a little bit of a star bursting out. I'm going to use the Hondo logic here and take the Packers because they are at home, although I would rather take the Texans. I'm going Packers.
I'm taking Texans. I'm all in on DeMeco. I'm all in on CJ. I'm all in on how they're building that team. CJ, let me just make this very clear. CJ is a great player. He's not a good player, he's a great player. But he is one of those rare players that is a star that doesn't think it's all. He has that Max Crosby, yeah, I'm a star, but that means there's more required of me. It's not about me. I love the way they're building around him on both sides of the ball. I'm going with the Texans.
Remember when we talked about he had like 33 individual handshakes with his players before starting one game? I said, whoa, that's interesting. And we all love Will Anderson around here. They're going the right direction fast. Is it too late? Is it the curse of Trey Lance? Is it time? I don't know what it is. San Francisco, Kansas City, coming off a bye week.
Totally cracked me up. The curse of Trey Lance. I love it.
Is that it?
Kansas City.
It looks to me. Yeah, it looks like the window is closing on San Francisco. I think this weekend is another hard truth in that matter. I like the Chiefs as well. Those are the 4 best games of the week. They're going to be really good, really, really easy to digest.
I agree. I'm going to go with the Chiefs there. All right, Johnny. I will be back up after this weekend, and you watch. If I'm not, it's going to be because of the one game where I went with my heart. All right, bud. Appreciate you. Tell everybody where to find you on X, please.
We chop it up at JP Spartan.
Check him out. We'll see you later, brother.